the Epstein files do have a remarkable staying power. I mean, just when you think we're done, we aren't.
Right.
So the next step really is what exactly is in these files.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by congressional reporter Samantha-Jo Roth. And SJ, the Epstein files were finally released. It was thought that the divisions, especially among Republicans, over this legislation could be a big issue in the Republican primaries. How is all of this going to play in the midterm elections?
Well, I think right now it really remains to be seen, but I think, when you had President Trump coming out and saying, oh, you should vote for the Epstein files, that really did free up a lot of Republicans to vote their conscience and not be worried about, going against the president and his huge political machine, which we know is a big decision for any Republican these days. So, a lot of these Republicans were able to vote the way they wanted to vote. And, the big question is what exactly is in these documents and how will that fare with, these candidates as we move forward? And that's, sort of an open question. But, a lot of strategists that I spoke with kind of talked about how President Trump essentially gave a lot of these Republicans, especially those who are up in different districts, that are more swing districts, that gave them a bit of a gift. So a lot of them are, thankful, that this didn't have to become a defining primary issue. Obviously, midterms are, a year away, so whether this is going to follow them is another question. But the Epstein files do have a remarkable staying power. I mean, just when you think we're done, we aren't.
Right.
So, the next step really is what exactly is in these files.
Yeah, who's named and what kind of relationships different members of Congress maybe had, both parties had,
Yeah,
obviously
absolutely.
the Trump relationship. So all of those things kind of come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. If, members of Congress are in some of these files, how exactly they respond, whether, the president's conduct in these files, which we don't even know if there is any, but if there is anything in these files that blows back on the president, how is that portrayed back on Republican candidates? And, will Democrats use this? So it certainly is unclear how much of a defining issue this will be. But, this week certainly was a turning point.
So concerns about holiday air travel were probably the biggest issue that ended the government shutdown, brought a lot of Democrats in the Senate back to the table to resolve the issue. But as you've written about, that air travel system has a lot of problems that are not necessarily just solved by the short-term government funding.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a hearing this week in the Senate Commerce Committee, or Transportation rather, and they spoke about this, industry leaders, union leaders, talking about this, crippling number of air traffic controllers. They are about, 30% down what they actually should have. And this really does just cripple them in every part of the air travel system. When you just don't have enough of these people, it definitely is a cause for concern. There's a lot of push to revamp the system, to upgrade the technology, to upgrade, these flight towers around the country. That is something that lawmakers are really working towards. They talk about that all the time, but, trying to replace these people who are irreplaceable at this point, there is not technology that can do the jobs that these people are doing.
Right.
It's tough. And, this week even, the president of the National Air Traffic Controllers talked about how, in Oklahoma City, where these schools are for training the air traffic controllers, there's an alarming level of people that quit. It's a tough job. When we talk,
stressful job.
So stressful. And when you talk to the people who are in these towers, they're dealing with 25 incoming, outgoing aircraft an hour. I mean, just trying to wrap your mind around how much, they're having to juggle with outdated technology, limited brakes. I mean, the system we saw was at a breaking point earlier this year. I mean, I think all of us were looking very closely at what happened at the Reagan National Airport on January 29th,
Right.
the midair collision that killed 71 people. I mean, this was a big problem, and there's still questions about whether there were enough people in the tower, whether, the military, which was, the military Black Hawk, which is the one that collided with the commercial air jet, was properly communicated with. So, a lot of these questions are still being, tackled and investigated. But I think the common denominator here is just more air traffic controllers are going to make the system better.
So how much of the problem is money? So obviously you have to pay the air traffic controllers. If you want to hire new air traffic controllers, you both have to pay the new air traffic controllers, but you also need to fund training for them, which is not an easy process. And obviously technology costs money.
Well, I think the money is a lot of the problem. And, if you talk to some of these air traffic controllers, they will tell you that on the outside, it's portrayed as a profession that gets a significant amount of money. This is a profession where you do not need a college degree and you can make up to 6 figures. So that is very appealing. But when you talk to some of these air traffic controllers, a lot of them are not getting the salaries that you think that they're getting. I've talked to people, in high cost of living areas who are making 6 figures, but are very senior and still say that, they're working 6 days a week, they're working 12-hour shifts, nights, early mornings, and feel that they are not compensated enough. Sean Duffy talked about this and talked about, increasing bonuses to these air traffic controllers. That is all like in this package that he's trying to get across the line. Obviously it's all going to fall back on Congress. They're going to have to fund these bills. Now that the government's open, the big question is about these, year-long appropriations bills.
Right.
And so, when you look at TSA, transportation, all of this is going to have to go under that. And whether Congress can actually do their job and fund the government for a full year is another question.
All right, the government's open at least until next year.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, for a short amount of time. We'll be back here talking about it soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, SJ.
Thank you.
You can read Samantha-Jo and the rest of our political team's coverage at WashingtonExaminer.com.